we have a college football playoff game in front of likely 107 plus thousand people at Kyle Field. Texas A&M hosts Miami in what is likely one of the premier matchups of this entire weekend. You look at Alabama and Oklahoma, but I think the fireworks might be happening in this game. You love to see the quarterback matchup here because I think we got two pretty polarizing quarterbacks, and I think we're going to help answer maybe some mistruths with that. You got two of the better offensive lines in the entire country, two of the best pass rusher NFL edge prospects in this game as well. Like you have everything. A&M's getting healthy at the running back position. Le'Veon Moss. I mean, whoa, what great timing. You got some premier weapons here. Casey Concepcion and Mario Craver on one side. You look at Malachi Tony and CJ Daniels on the other side. This is a football game. And this is what expanding the playoffs, which I was not a big advocate of, it's games like this. Getting these games as home playoff games is pretty magical. That is the magical part about this 12-team playoff. Would you agree?
For sure. And I hate to be a downer, but, hats off to whoever decided it to put it at freaking 11 a.m. local time. Now, I understand College Station's going to be vibing no matter what. They'll be going out Friday night. They'll be out there early morning Saturday. I understand you don't want to compete with the NFL, yada, yada, yada. I don't care for it. I want to see them in a primetime spot, but I digress. Nonetheless, it's going to be an incredible atmosphere. Like you said, you've got two extremely talented teams. You got a couple big-time coaches as well. It's awesome. I mean, this is where we're here, and this is what we'll get. 7 versus 10 matchup. Winner will see, I believe, Ohio State, right? The 2 seed
in the Cotton Bowl.
In the Cotton Bowl there. So Miami, if they win, they get to play again in the state of Texas. Texas A&M again gets almost a home game against Ohio State. So that's your Congrats to Ohio State, right, for making the 2 seed. And they get to go on the road in their first spot. But nonetheless, it's going to be awesome here. I can't wait. Get a couple of fantastic quarterbacks, Carson Beck and Marcel Reed, guys that have been up and down at times this year, up and down in their career, and they've kind of figured it out here. I think we will see a clean game from both of them potentially. Now, I do worry if you get some pressure on A&M, they can't run the ball, yada yada yada. Get down. Marcel Reed, I think potentially could put in harm's way as well. With Carson Beck too, we've seen him do that as well. But I think what they've been doing and having success is his average depth of target is plummeting, right? It is 7.3. That is about bottom 10 of quarterbacks in FBS that have typically been playing, for their teams. And it's right around names like Gunnar Stockton, Haynes King, right? Garrett Nussmeier, guy playing with one arm. So that's kind of been their forte, is get those receivers open in space and let them go make plays and see what happens. And also it puts you in a spot where you don't have to turn the ball over. You don't have to push the ball down the field. Now, I think you're going to want to against this A&M team. And correct me if I'm wrong, we've seen them in certain spots give up some big plays, whether that's run after the catch or whether that is, more explosive, big crossing routes over the middle, just going up and making a play against a pretty good corner. That's where I'm at. It's going to be awesome.
I would agree with that. I think A&M has been less susceptible this year than last year, but definitely a team and a defense that's been, at least the personnel that they have, it's been susceptible occasionally to the explosive play, which Miami, unfortunately for A&M, has generated plenty of explosive plays this year through the air. Truth or lie, CD, Carson Beck is a more turnover-prone quarterback than Marcel Reed.
I think that is false.
It's a lie. It actually is a lie. And here's the thing. I'm not here to hate on Marcel Reed because I think he's a great quarterback. I think he's in the upper echelon. Maybe not that tier 1, but he's in the upper echelon of quarterbacks in college football. He's a great leader. What he gives you as an X factor on the ground, his escapability, he is tough to prepare for. He's got a dad as a coach, fantastic leader, head on his shoulders, great quarterback. But to say that he is more turnover worthy or less turnover prone than Carson Beck, I think is inaccurate. I think if you watch Carson Beck, sure, people want to pull up the highlights in some of those games where maybe stuff derailed for Carson Beck. If you want to tell me that Carson Beck is more prone to, compounding mistakes, I'll hear you out there. Marcel Reed a little bit more resilient in that aspect, as we saw in the South Carolina game. But also, what you saw in the South Carolina game was a lot of turnover worthy plays that weren't necessarily capitalized upon by South Carolina, which is actually what leads A&M in this spot. You lose that game against South Carolina, you're not here in this spot. You are not here. So Marcel Reed has about, and this is a number from PFF, you can check it yourself, about twice the turnover worthy play rate than Carson Beck, if you can believe it or not. And I think a lot of that, the misnomer comes from people not watching Carson Beck in like a lot of these games, seeing the highlights and the losses. The losses are where the turnovers happen. And if Carson Beck turns the ball over and throws interceptions, which, by the way, A&M's defense, 1 interception or 3 interceptions on the entire year. The secondary has not been grabbing footballs. So if Carson Beck all of a sudden starts to turn the ball over, they're in a lot of trouble. But I think in this game, you're more likely to actually see a Marcel Reed turnover than a Carson Beck turnover. And I think that people will think I am crazy for saying that. Doesn't mean that we're Marcel Reed haters on this show. In fact, I would rather have Marcel Reed as my quarterback than Carson Beck. And I think Texas A&M would agree, and I think Miami would agree from the standpoint, at least today, like they don't want to have to prepare for what Marcel Reed brings. Like it is much more difficult to prepare for a quarterback like Marcel Reed than it is to prepare for Carson Beck.
Absolutely. It is low-hanging fruit to go after the Carson Beck turnover-worthy plays and interceptions. And by the way, newsflash, yeah, when your quarterback throws interceptions, you're going to lose games. Like, no dare ask anybody. That's just what happens. That's Alabama against Oklahoma. We just previewed that game, what we'll see there. So, yeah, I don't want to hear that there. But like you said, we are Marcel Reed guys here on this podcast. I will say that he is a quarterback you can win a national title with. And I was hesitant to get there. And the more and more I've watched him this year, I think he has progressed. His accuracy, is, for one, I think has been much better year over year, which is big time. I do want to ask you, in terms of the coaching changes, we're seeing a lot more at A&M versus Miami, and it is so unfortunate that we have to talk about this when previewing games that are going to eventually decide the national title winner in terms of how we pick a champion in the sport because of the calendar. But I want to ask you about Jay Bateman, defensive coordinator for A&M, as well as Colin Klein, both going on to take new roles at other schools. Are you a little bit worried about, one foot out, one foot in, excuse me?
I think you're more so worried about that with Colin Klein being the head coach at a Big 12 school. A lot greater responsibility. Still lots of responsibility being defensive coordinator in an SEC school, like at a school like Kentucky, where Jay Bateman is going. But Jay Bateman doesn't call the defense. Like he has significant, impact. Like some of the Florida guys that he brought over, Scooby Williams, like he's definitely helped him a lot. And Scooby Williams being healthy for this one potentially is big. Jay Bateman being a part of that preparation, sure. But Colin Klein is the more one to be concerned about. But I'm not super worried. Like Colin Klein he's an animal, and he has been in his bag all season long. There's a chance Colin Klein has a bad game, as we've seen. I'm not going to hold it against him, for one taking that job. Obviously, he can't control the college football calendar, and then also, I think just like having Le'Veon Moss back just makes your offense look better, like in general. So I don't see this having too big of an impact, but something that I'm sure people are calibrating for.
Yeah, Le'Veon Moss is on the short list of players I do not want to tackle in a hole. He does fight for extra yards. He gives you so much things, especially when you get him going. And that's when A&M's been good too, when they are getting, not necessarily gashing you with chunk plays to the ground, but when they are going 6-7 yards consistently, they're staying ahead of the chains. They're getting in the rhythm. And Colin Klein's just like, yeah, let's run it again. And setting up the play action, getting your receivers in space, getting the linebackers to step in, safeties to step in. It's when that is clicking for A&M, they are a dangerous football team offensively. Switching to the other side, I want to ask you, I think you're going to have a lot of NFL GMs salivating over the opportunity to watch Francis Mauigoa versus Cassius Howell, right? That's the right tackle for Miami and the defensive end, the edge for Texas A&M. And they got some other guys there too with Hayes and whoever else coming off the edge, but that will be fun to watch. And if you can get after Carson Beck, who is not mobile at all, like that will be so fun. Tell me a little bit about that. Also, tell me about A&M earning the right to rush the passer in this spot here for Miami running the football. I think a focal point for them will be doing that in terms of winning on first and second down.
Look, I think there's this misnomer, like when you just look at the blank slate metrics. There were some games where Miami struggled to run the football. You can also say that about Texas A&M if you want to get a little bit nitpicky. But this idea that Miami can't run the football, I think is a little bit incorrect. They have a stable of running backs, a stable of very, very talented running backs. And if it wasn't for Le'Veon Moss being healthy, I might give the advantage to Miami's running back room. Like it is loaded with talent on that side, not to mention the offensive line. So you need that interior defense to play really well. You need Tyler Onyedem, right, to continue playing great like he has this year. Great pickup from Iowa State. And then on run fits, you saw it against Texas, man. Like when your weak side linebacker, like it's not fitting in spots and Torian York's not getting in that position and like there's a lot of traffic to navigate there. There are huge, gigantic, explosive plays. So like Torian York is going to be a gigantic part of this game. He is the fulcrum in this run defense, in my opinion, in this game. When you have a really talented offensive line trying to get their hands on linebackers, how well does he navigate that traffic? I think it's going to have a huge determinant on the outcome of this game. And if you're able to stop the run, then you pin your ears back and you see what you can do and how to get creative against on Carson Beck. I'm not sure how successful you are going to be getting pressures on him because of this offensive line, but A&M does lead the country in sacks. They have gotten to the quarterback all year. Cassius Howe, it has been shown time and time again, it doesn't matter who you put in front of him. He will find a way to get to the quarterback at least once a game. Dan Hayes has been great. Marco Jones has been an interesting piece. Ryland Kennedy on third downs as well. It's a really unique group on this defensive line for A&M. Seeing like the flip from last year where you had these NFL guys like Nick Gordon, Shamar Stewart, Shamar Turner, all guys that were, top 70 picks in the NFL draft. And, Cassius Howe is essentially out sacking the three of those guys combined. It's a very interesting group here. I want to say I believe Texas A&M can stop the run. I think they have to do it before I can say I firmly believe that they will do it. I thought they were going to do it against Texas. Texas found a way like they did in 2024 with Trey Wisner to run the football effectively, generate some explosive plays. You're right. A&M has to earn the right to rush the passer in this one. And don't think for a second, Miami has made that mistake before this season against some teams where they abandon the run. I don't think for a second that they're going to be abandoning the run here on the road.
No, and they shouldn't. They absolutely should not. It'll be interesting here. I want to give you this. So the over-under is at 50.5. It's A&M spread by 3.5. So Vegas is telling you it's going to be about 27, 28 to 24, something around there. If I give you 30 points right now for Texas A&M, do you think they're taking at the bank? You tell Mike Elko and Colin Klein, you get 30 points against this Miami team. Is that enough, or do you take the alternative of just play it out and see?
I think Mike Elko's defensive head coach would take it. I'm not sure that that's exactly going to be enough. It helps that it's at home. You gave up 40 points to a couple teams this year. Fortunately, those games were wins. Not a lot of times A&M in its history has given up 40 points and, lost football or won football games, but they did it twice this year against Arkansas and Notre Dame. I think if you give up, I think it's more about if you give up under 30, that's more important than I think, or in terms of determining the outcome of the game than scoring 30. Because I think that the defense for A&M is going to be for sure a fulcrum right here. Assuming that the rushing attack you get with the boost with Le'Veon Moss, you see an efficient offense and Colin Klein is in his bag.
Yeah. Also, I want to ask you here in terms of potentially a third down, second and long, whatever it may be. Miami runs a lot of screens. They really do. And I do wonder if an aggressive defensive front like A&M, if you see them, obviously they're going to be watching film and they're going to understand that you got to smell a rat and you got to retrace your steps.
Yeah.
If things are going to happen there. But Miami's had a really, really good screen game. And it's been an extension of the running game. It's been an extension of getting the ball in hands of playmakers. They are like second in the country in first downs off of screens. They run just about as many as everyone else in the country. There are about 90 screenplays according to PFF. Is that something that you think Miami's going to have an opportunity to like potentially break some big plays in terms of running for the catch? Like that could be huge.
Sure, I would say that if like Torian York wasn't the linebacker for Texas A&M,
Yeah, that's a good
like
point.
that is a guy that watches his film. I mean, he's the first guy to smell a rat in any sort of situation like that. So I'm not, necessarily as worried about that. But I will say, I mean, I've picked against A&M in every game this year, but I will be taking once again Miami plus 3.5, and I'll take them to win this football game. It'll be tough for them for sure to go on the road. I think you might be seeing a Marcel Reed interception here or there. If A&M's rushing attack doesn't get the bump with Le'Veon Moss coming back, because again, we don't know what he looks like coming back from this injury. We know that he hasn't been able to necessarily finish games due to various reasons on the sidelines. Like if you don't have this rushing attack that you're hoping to have against a really physical football team, and I'll say that Miami is a physical football team, despite what you thought you knew about Miami football. Mario Cristobal has these guys very physical. If you are matched from a physicality perspective, like they were against Texas, and by the way, Texas was the only team this year to match A&M's physicality for 4 quarters. If Miami is able to do the same thing, I think Miami has a really good chance of going into College Station, which is a brutal place to go to, and you know how insane that place is going to be with 107 plus thousand people. Wouldn't be surprised if they squeaked in 108 and a half. I mean, it is going to be absolutely nuts at 11 a.m. Midnight Yell is going to be packed. Miami fans are going to be touring this place and they're going to be like, holy crap, like, why can't we have a football stadium on campus? Why can't we have like a fans like this? Like, it's a bucket list stadium for a lot of places, and Miami went to it a couple years ago and really struggled there. Uh, Specifically on offense, lots of penalties in a similar, different coordinator, right? Mario Cristobal was still the head coach there, though. Different quarterback, obviously. Tyler Van Dyke, not necessarily the guy, but I think that there's a chance here that Miami goes on the road and kind of swipes this one from A&M, which would be really tough for the fans there.
Yeah, you bring them home field advantage. This will be, I mean, this is one of the toughest places to play in the country, no doubt, especially for big games. Maybe, the toughest potentially, depending on who you ask. But, I mean, they've gone and seen Florida State, right? Understand that was early in the season. Like, that was still a revamped, a pretty excited Florida State crowd there. SMU, again, but they kind of struggled in both of those games there. It will be interesting. Obviously, you can't count out Kyle Field. You can't count out the 12th man. With all that being said, though, I'm going to be on Miami as well. I do think they're going to get it done. I think their defense is going to show up. And by the way, their defense is like actually a metrically better defense than A&M, and we'll see what happens with the matchup there. But I think they get after a really, really good offensive line with their guys. They have recruited so well up front on both sides of the ball, and you're going to see that. Like you talked about the physicality of Miami and what happens when they punch A&M in the face. It'll be a shock, I think, to some A&M fans and to some fans nationally who are watching this Miami team potentially for the first time since Notre Dame, back in week 1. And just wow, yeah, this is a physical football team. They get it done. Last thing here before we go, if you are Ohio State, if you are an Ohio State fan, if you're a coaching staff on that Ohio State team, who would you rather see in this spot here, A&M or Miami?
I think you'd rather see Miami.
I think so too. Because I think I think that's probably the right answer.
I don't think you like. There's Ohio State's defense is so athletic. Like, I don't think Marcel Reed would be as big of a problem for that defense relative to other defenses. But I think you'd rather see Miami in this one. I think you'd rather see a team that would be quicker to abandon the run, right? I think A&M is a more physical football team, but I also what I'm saying before earlier was that Miami can match their physicality. And then I also think that like there are some players on A&M's wide receiver core, and Malachi Toner is an exceptional athlete as well. He's a phenomenal football player, an explosive one as well. One of the better up-and-coming receivers in the country. I just think like there are players on A&M's wide receiver core, multiple of them that like can actually like not necessarily out-athlete Ohio State secondary, but it will be tough for Ohio State to cover some of those guys.
Yeah, I think even though I'm picking Miami in the spot here, just the matchup, I think Miami gets done at A&M, but I think A&M is a little bit more dangerous at their best, right? And obviously, Ohio State will be favored against both these teams pretty confidently, but that's where we're at too. Also, if you're A&M's secondary, I think you've got some guys in the cornerback room that you probably feel better about going against Ohio State's wide receivers than what Miami can do in terms of having multiple guys that have to be left on islands and have to make plays one on one. But nonetheless, this is going to be a heck of a game here. We're both on Miami plus 3.5. We'll see what happens. 11 a.m. kickoff, College Station. Oh, do not miss it.